So I'm on. I'll just pretend there's 50 people here or so, but I won't talk too long. Just a short story about us. Family-owned business, started in the 70s as a transportation company. Story, 60s, 70s in the tour business. 84, I came along and started Shoreline tours in Michigan, and eventually it came to Ohio. Where we were talking about a minute ago. That's where the majority of our business comes from. We're known for as a first-class company. A big part of what we do is I travel the country putting these tours together. These tours are not inexpensive anymore, so we better know what we're doing when showtime comes. So I spent a lot of time doing this type of thing, putting our programs together, getting around the country a little bit, developing relationships with the hotels and all that stuff and so on. We are recognized as a first-class company. There's a couple things on here. We always talk about this in big group presentations about cancellation protection. I would at least encourage you to take a look at that. We do it ourselves. If not, we don't use a third-party provider. It makes it a lot easier for us. You folks can't go. There's no doctors out required. I just let them know, no, you can't go, and your money's back or returned. No questions asked except for the cost of that, whatever that insurance cost is. So basically what we're here today for is to do a couple presentations, Canadian Rockies, South Dakota. These tours have multiple groups on them. And we'll talk a lot about, we never know how well these tours are. I should say we don't know how well they're going to sell. We're 98% of our tours sell. We just don't know. We don't have that crystal ball as far as what groups are going to get so many people. So we always encourage people, if they're interested, to try to register as early as possible. I'm not saying today or 2 weeks from now, but in the next month or so, if there is some interest, we would encourage you to register. So let's just get into these. A lot of these are visuals about the Rockies. The key things on this is location of hotels. We will always use 3- and 4-star hotels unless it's one night on the way and you Hampton Inns. Everybody's acquainted with Hampton Inns. But no matter what tour company, no, it's not working. This arguably is the premier destination in North America, and whatever tour company was standing here, they would tell you it's a bucket list trip and it's stunning. And so we spent some time, 3 nights in Banff and 3 nights in a little place called Waterton, Alberta, which we'll talk a little bit about. And these are what is called the Canadian Rockies. Our home base is in Banff, so we're flying Detroit, Montreal, Calgary. That's the best route we can do for the history that we have with the airlines. Last year we were supposed to fly out of Windsor. It didn't materialize because the small airline we used canceled on us a couple months before. That's a long story. It worked out, but it's kind of nerve-wracking for tour companies like us with the responsibilities we have for you guys. So fly to Calgary, then we're in Banff. So whether we go to New York City or Banff or this little town I'm going to talk to you about later on, Waterton, which you may not be acquainted with, we will stay in the best locations or one of the best locations in these areas. We won't travel back and forth and waste all this time on buses. So this is the Banff Springs, the Caribou Lodge in downtown Banff. And Banff is a very commercialized mountain town. We'll give you a little bit of time to do some shopping and so on, but this is just some of the appointments, how the hotel, and then we'll start doing day tours from there. So Yoho National Park runs parallel with Banff National Park, not as name recognized as Banff, but every bit is beautiful. And there's some of the attractions that are in Yoho will be described by our tour guide. So for the first 3 days, we have a guide in Banff and Yoho National Park. And these are just some of the main attractions in the park. Of course, we'll have running narration with our guide, with all of these particular. Chateau Lake Louise, arguably the top hotel in Canada. We will stop here. You'll have some free time. That picture of the glacier in the background here, at one time, it still may be the most photographed picture in the world, called Victoria Glacier. That's the background. The foreground is this beautiful hotel. So we'll have a little bit of time. Lunch is on your own. There's some world-class shopping in there. But what a lot of people do is they'll do a short little walk around the lake, which is perfectly flat and safe. And a lot of people mill around the hotel taking pictures because it's world-class scenery, to say the least. That's the glacier there. That was the #1 photo in the world at one time. We're on our way up to Columbian Icefield. This is the Icefields Parkway, recognized one of the most scenic drives in the world. It eventually ends up in Jasper. We'll go halfway and stop at Columbian Icefield, which is a must-see. These are the big snow coaches that take you out onto the glacier. But this is different than Colorado, because these mountains, they don't start at a mile up, so it's like they surround you. When we're driving up the Icefields Parkway, we will return the same way, and you'll see different visuals both north and south. Banff Springs Hotel, another one of the Fairmont 5-star hotel chains. I show this because it's a landmark there, but we always say it's a surprise, one of the dinners, but I tend to find myself saying that we do have dinner here as one of the dinners that's included, with beautiful views of the landscape around Bow Falls and Bow River in the background. It's in the Vermilion Room, and it's lovely. And it's a highlight dinner. We'll tell you a little bit about the rest on your final itineraries. And this is the room that we dine in. I'm going off a day or two here. This is these big snow coaches that we take up from the parkway up on the Athabasca Glacier. So these tires will be bigger than we are for the most part. And they'll take you right out of the glacier, a couple-hour experience. You're gonna drink the water, be careful. And every tour company and every visitor does the Columbian Icefields. It's a must-see. Banff National Park, before we leave, we'll have a tour of Banff National Park, so you'll get Yoho and Banff. And this is some of the scenery. You'll learn more, of course, like I mentioned earlier, from our step-on guide, who will be with us for the first 2 days. Bow Falls, the hoodoos, really bizarre landscape in and around some of the and there's wildlife all over the place. Downtown Banff, we'll have a little bit of time. Picture a very eclectic, cool, charming little downtown with touristy shops too, of course, but that background. So it's kind of a lot of different. This is the Bayshore Inn. So now we're on our way to a little town called Waterton, which is not as recognized as much as Banff and Jasper. It's still in the Canadian Rockies, and it's the most southern part of Alberta. The reason we're here is because of that scenery for one, but also its proximity to Glacier National Park. So we can do a day trip from here to Glacier, and it's only an hour and a half, and we can spend the majority of our day in Glacier. We talked a little bit earlier about Banff Caribou Lodge being right downtown. This is the best location in this little town, is the Bayshore Inn. 3-star, and it's right on the lake. And basically that's what our focus is on most of the tours we do. We do stay at 4-star hotels in like New York City at the Marriott. If we stay in 3-star hotels that are well appointed, nice amenities, our people are happy and they're pleased with our hotel selection. The Going to the Sun Highway in Glacier National Park is one of the most scenic drives in the world as well. These red coaches were built by Ford here, I believe. And that's the best way to tour. Some companies will tour on their bus, which is not the best way to do it. This is the best way to do it, to tour. There's 16 passenger vehicles. You can see the roof. You can pop your head on the roof for pictures and so on as we're skirting the roads of Glacier. And that's a 6 hour day. It's an hour and a half or so there, hour and a half back. So it makes for not a killer day with some, memorable sights, of course. Our hotel is right downtown, so we can, when we give you the afternoon free, you can walk downtown. You can walk through the boat cruise, which highlights one of the mornings, or our last morning when we're there. And you're still in the Rockies, so you're still getting these massive peaks, and some of them stay snow-capped all year round, and the cute little town. We're on our way back to fly home. Head smash in Buffalo Jump is a little bit north of where we are in Waterton. It's a World Heritage Site. Basically, it talks about the Indians and their survival methods of chasing buffaloes off these cliffs, and that's how they hunted. There's a lot more involved with that. They have a world-class interactive museum and history center, if you will. And that'll do the Rockies.
So this is in August. What's the weather usually like?
It's better than here. I say that because humidity, they don't get the humidity we do. So if tour companies are really doing the right thing by their travelers, they're going in June, July, or August. You'll see companies going off, shoulder season a little bit. Anytime we do it, it's July and August. So when you get your final itinerary, it'll talk about the final itinerary, travel tips, weather, clothing, just some tips to help you prepare. And we would say high 70s to early 80s as far as average temperatures by day. So we're good. Okay, South Dakota. So just to set this up a little bit, even for the people who may be watching this in their homes, I guess, Danielle, at some point. This trip we've done for many, many years. It used to be an air tour. Not that that's important now, but it's how we've evolved to actually do this better. So the airlines, it was a very difficult routing from Detroit to Rapid City, South Dakota, meaning splitting our groups up on a couple different planes, and that just didn't work so we started busing, and it's worked out well. The big part of that is we're in one place for 4 days when we get there, so we're not in out of our luggage every day or every other day. And we can see some really cool things to and from. Airports they're a little different nowadays. We have representation with our tour people and representation of the airports to make that as fluid as possible. And the airports are nothing that should be alarming, but they're busy nowadays. People are traveling more than it seems like they have. But this has been a really popular motor coach tour for us. So on the way down, as we get closer, we'll be stopping in Sioux Falls in this area. There's a lunch overlooking Sioux Falls. And then we're making our way west. The Mitchell Corn Palace is a dedication to the farmer and the farmland out west. And one of their main crops is corn. So these are all murals of corn you may know this, on the Corn Palace, and they're replaced every year because birds will eat them. And so they have different murals every year. So we'll get a guided tour of that, learn a little bit of the very proud farming industry in the area. And then we're still making we've already got a couple of kind of cool things under the belt. First day is a big day. Like every bus tour is, every first day is a 500-mile day. And we're creeping closer to a little town called Deadwood. There's a Badlands National Park. That's where we meet our guide. And we're with that guide for 3 full days there. That's another big thing, especially in Banff as well. We can get local guides to share with us. We're not skilled we're skilled at putting these tours together, we need some help when we get out there. So we meet our guide here, and be the same guide with you for a few days. And this is really one of the most eerie lunar landscapes in the West, if not in America. Back in the day, if you've heard of Wall Drugstore, I'm not, in the summertime, they still advertise that 20,000 people a day stop here. And it's crazy that many people stop at this, and you can, whatever you can think of is in this store. And backdated decades, just some really interesting things. This is our hotel for 4 nights. We changed this a couple of years ago. We had a group from Lima who just did this with us a year, not last summer, they did Colorado, summer before. First time we use this hotel, it's the premier or one of the premier hotels in Deadwood. And it is in a perfect location. It's a stone throw to downtown. But I'll give you an idea, a little bit of the proximity to downtown. Some of the nice amenities, full service, we have a cocktail lounge, a restaurant. And a lot of the meals we'll have here, we normally don't at hotels. But when we come back after a full day of touring, we'll open the menu up. You can have anything you want from the menu, have a drink, casual, and then maybe go hit the town after. So if you haven't heard of Deadwood, it's really one of the coolest towns in the West. It's a little gaming town that's exploded after the gold rush. So nice, these will describe themselves. You know, they're very well appointed. The town of Deadwood is a very historic town from the gold rush. They turned it into limited stakes gambling. That is no where you only could bet $5 when we were there. It's now full, and they're little gaming parlors. Some of them are 4 times the size of this room. They're not the big sexy casinos like we're used to in Vegas or so. So this is just shots of, and this really is one of the coolest towns in the West for sure. You know, I'd put a top 10 in America. The gaming adds to that interest, that interest as well. And of all the world-class attractions that are close by, Mount Rushmore, Custard State, and so on. So Deadwood, we call it Deadwood Cemetery Tour. Basically, it's a city tour of Deadwood, and there's some historical characters that roam the streets of Deadwood. Calamity Jane, Wild Bill Hickok. One of the lunches we have at the Spearfish Canyon, in a little lodge there. Kevin Costner is involved with this. This is back years ago when the bison were almost extinct. It's a kind of a story of their rebirth, a little bit more involved in that. But these are sculptures in and around a place called Tatanka, and it's called The Story of Tatanka. So you'll learn a little bit about the buffalo back in the day. A mock trial of Jack McCall, which is pretty cool downtown. They do a gunfight, then they take you into one of the historic buildings, and they do a mock trial of Jack McCall. Audience participation, fun stuff. Mount Rushmore, I'll go through this kind of quickly. Everybody knows Mount Rushmore. And these are full days. When we're leaving, we're not leaving at 7:30 in the morning, just a heads up. We'll leave at 8:30. That seems to be a pretty fair time for people to have a leisurely breakfast, and then we'll start our day of hub and spoking, if you will, touring from one hotel out and about to all the big attractions. This is going to be the end product. Some of these are outdated, which is not really a big deal because this will take decades still to build. So it's come along. It's a good story because they use funds from people who visit for blasting. They don't use government monies or anything. So our admission, if you will, pays for the sculpting that's ongoing. And when they're done, you may know this too, but when they're done, it'll be bigger than the 4 heads put together. It's a Sioux Indian chief, and that's kind of the rendition of it after Custard State Park. Another kind of highlight will be a Jeep tour where the bison roam. Then we have lunch at the game lodge, which we don't have a picture of, but the tour by day or do the bison tour. I don't have the other picture too, so that day, as your brochure will read, is the Jeep tour through Custard, lunch at State Game Lodge, and then there's an 1880s train that takes us through the Black Hills. And that's included in the afternoon as well. It's on the brochure. It didn't get on our pretty pictures here, but check it out on the, Boys Town. Now, this is on the way home now. So these Boys Town, this is the story of Father Flanagan and when his vision to, take care, if you will, or help the wayward boys. It's turning to girls now too, and it's a lovely story. You'll hear lots about Father Flanagan. We're close to the Mississippi River on the way home, and this will conclude what we think is a really inclusive, fun tour with dinner on the Celebration Bell, dinner entertainment cruise, and then we're on our way home. So these bus tours can allow us to include a lot more things than flying something.
So when you go to Custer State Park, are you talking about the little bit on there?
No, Little Bighorn, I believe is Wyoming. I think it's Sheridan, it's not Sheridan, but no, it's not. It's a big state park with some buffalo history, and lodging and so on.
You might have said it, but so where does it start from?
Well, that's always, that's a good question. So for people that may be watching on, where do we start from? And a lot of that depends on how many people we get. So we would say we'd have to have a minimum of 8 people to pick up here. If that's not the case, then we would let you know in plenty of time or make some arrangements to get transportation. They're made depending on if there's only a handful of people, we may ask people to split the cost with us for transportation. We used to, quite frankly, do that, handle that on our own, but with transportation costs, it's not built into our tours. So with transportation costs being the way they are now, we can't, we've done that for years and we just can't anymore. So there's a couple. The best option is leaving from here, depending on the number of people. Second option is providing transportation to meet the group at a convenient place where we're not on a milk run, driving you all over the place. So that's where we come in, but we'd like to get 8 people, then we can pick up here. It's only January. I think we have 15 or 18 people registered on the tour. The Rockies is almost 20 now. So we have a lot of little, I shouldn't say little, but retiree centers from Michigan primarily on this. So our numbers can go from 20 to 30 in a week, and then it might slow down for a month where nobody registers. So that's where the crystal ball, we don't have a little foggy.
So in the motor coach here, what do you see? Where in Detroit? Is there a place to park the car?
Well, we wouldn't send you to Detroit. So we'd make it something like, let's just say hypothetical, you 2 folks are the only ones signed up. I don't know if that, then we'd have to get with you and give you an idea of where the most convenient place is for everybody, right? So now we're gonna have 35, 40, 45 people. What we used to do to some degree was go pick up 3 and 4 people and it interfere with the flow of getting out of the gate well. So we've got to ask people maybe to go 20 miles or 15 miles. Any place that we've had pickups before at senior centers, they always leave their cars there. So anywhere we go, we're not going to ask you to leave it in a Myers parking lot. These are all at centers that
We use the Meyer parking. We use the Meyer parking lot.
If as long as you have, so
We
they
have-
know you do.
We do,
Right.
yeah.
So
We have an agreement with them.
So-
Where's the Meyer?
Meyer on in Bowling Green.
Or is it big out here, but it's
Yeah.
somewhere else?
So for the people who are also listening about cancellation, just that's due with your deposit. And on these types of tours, and we're primarily known for doing some of these extended tours. We do 3 and 4 day tours as well, which we'll maybe at some point introduce here. But a lot of people buy this insurance for peace of mind because we're encouraging people to register early. It helps your planning. It makes our planning a lot easier. And with that, we need to give you peace of mind that your monies are protected. The worst case scenario, the day before you can't go. And it doesn't matter why. You just let Danielle know. And we can control it rather than having a third party provider like an insurance company who has some of the things are written this big. So I've had experience with insurance companies myself. We introduced this years ago, about 25 to 30 years ago, believe it or not. And it's worked well, mainly for the traveler, but it's worked well for us too. Because I do these all over and have for 40 years. Nobody's ever put their hand up and said, well, you didn't give me my money back. Because I'm in the firing line, so just something to consider.
What's the amenities on the bus?
Buses are 3 years old or newer. TVs, restroom, of course, air conditioning, they're nice. They're nice.
So you bring your
They're all,
iPad or something.
yeah, all Wi-Fi.
They're all like,
Yeah, they're using Wi-Fi every other seat. Some of the new ones have not every seat. So we've had relationships. We're starting to use a company in Ohio. You ever hear of Barron's Bus?
Mhm.
So because of the main part of our business now is in Ohio. We're starting a relationship with a company, kind of sort of near Cleveland.
Cleveland, yes, I have.
So I stopped there the other day, again, just because that's part of what we do. And their buses are no more than 3 years old. I looked at a couple ones right out of the gate, brand new. So whatever you're on, it's gonna be nice, comfortable model.
and you said with the Canadian Rockies trip to Florida, Detroit to Montreal.
Detroit, Montreal, Calgary.
So you change planes in Montreal?
Yeah.
And then go south.
Yeah.
Well, it sure would be driving 19 hours across Ontario to try and get out of a different office.
Now, we wouldn't bust Calgary, that's for sure. We would bust Dakota.
No, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
one of my bucket lists is to get out of Ontario.
To get,
Out of Ontario, I mean,
Oh.
you can go, you can go to Ireland, you can drive around,
oh yeah,
or Europe, you can drive around different countries, but in Ontario, once you get there, it takes a long time.
It's a big province.
oh yeah, big, like Quebec.
So
So,
on the South Dakota tour, so do you drive straight all the way until you get out there? or-
so we would stop in, Iowa, first night, Mitchell, South Dakota, second night. Third day after the Badlands, we're in Deadwood, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So call it 2.5 days. 500 and 250 miles. Most we can go 600 on a bus. We'll try not to do that because that's a big day. So it's 2.5 days there, 2.5 days thereabouts back with. It's just not rolling down high. The first day is, the rest is not. First and last day are straight home. Day 2 and day 9 are. And day 2, 3 and 8, 9 are attractions after we leave, before and after we're in Deadwood.
And we have Canadian money. What is how does everybody else get Canadian money if they don't have?
Well, when we would put that on our travel tips as well as, most people use credit cards because they're gonna get the rate of exchange at the time of the transaction. If you were to want Canadian money, I'm not sure what all the banks are. Some people have told me it's easier to get Canadian money with some heads up
Mhm.
out of American Bank. You can't go into 2 days before you're gonna go and ask for $2,000.
Takes a week.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna want some Canadian money for tipping and that's the other thing too. So anyway, I would use credit cards, and that'll be on the travel tips too, credit cards or give your bank some heads up and,
What is the, of these two trips, which one is most comfortable? What would you say?
so, well, I'm gonna say that's hard. If I had to pick one just for sheer beauty, it's the Canadian Rockies. Only because that's one of the most beautiful places in the world, not just North America. And a lot of people will say, I'm not just telling you that because I'm up here. Yeah, that's hard to say, because some people won't fly. So the Rockies is totally out of the question. Now, how many, what the percentages is, I don't know. But we're not a big company, so it's not like we offer these tours every year. So I can't give you a kind of a gauge if we do 5 of these and 2 of these a year. We have to create new product every year because our customer base is not extensive.
We were gonna mention the.
Oh, yeah, so, tipping for guides and everything is included. The only thing tipping is not included is for the bus driver, coach driver, and the guides. So you have a guide, you'll have a tour director from Shoreline Tours, and you'll have a step-on guide, which we will take care of in the Canadian Rockies. So you're only, and that'll be on the notes too, but that's a good question. So driver, Shoreline tour director. And we used to tippy-toe around that. It's a hospitality service business. And any of the places that we go to, a lot of these people make their living on guiding and tipping. And tipping is just the reality now, and it's obviously the service industry.
We do that, and I don't do that. I'll buy tours, and they kind of recommended, you know.
Yeah. And no company tippy-toes around that anymore. This is, yeah, and it's suggested tipping, that's the best we can do with some guidelines. Where did you go with, what company?
Yeah, Irish.
Irish company? Because we were looking at, my